In the late 1800s, Dr. James Naismith invented a new game for his male physical education students to play during their winter months. Hanging 2 peach baskets at each end of the gymnasium, the new sport quickly became popular, but not only with male students. Females began finding gym time and developing their own skills. Those supposedly in the know quickly adapted several rule changes for the girls' game, like 6 players rather than 5 per team, 3 in the front court and 3 in the back court. Those rules were aimed at protecting women. This fight for equality throughout the 20th century, including women's rights to vote, women's equal pay, and employment opportunities, were often linked to athletics and the role of females. While the men's game quickly became a varsity sport in college with scholarships and even Olympic opportunities, the women's game remained an exhibition. With emphasis placed on sportsmanship and less strenuous competition, over the 20th century, leaders of the women's game remained vigilant. In the 1960s and early 1970s, international women's basketball took shape. This persistence was finally rewarded as women's basketball was finally declared an Olympic sport at the 1976 Summer Games in Montreal, Canada. Today, on a very special Student Connections, we will be meeting 2 great leaders, Miss Juliene Simpson and Miss Carolyn Roddy. These pioneers helped lead the way to women's success on the court and in their communities. We will also be meeting Mr. Andrew Maraniss, the New York Times best-selling author of Inaugural Ballers. His book chronicles this basketball and life journey for the past 130 years. I will hope you stay tuned with us.
Welcome to Student Connections. Our students connecting with our community.
Welcome to Student Connections. Our guests today are Miss Juliene Simpson, Miss Carolyn Roddy, along with author Mr. Andrew Maraniss. Both of our women guests played basketball at the highest level during their careers. Mr. Maraniss' book, Inaugural Ballers, chronicles the evolution of women's basketball from its infancy to the 1976 Summer Olympics in Montreal to present time. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. So on the surface, your book is about the evolution of women's basketball, but this story parallels with women's rights issues, including voting rights, employment, opportunities, and equal protection through the 20th century. Do you guys agree with how the 2 issues developed together?
You want to start?
Oh, 'cause am I the older one? Well, I think his book is amazing because it does start with the inception of how women's basketball started. And through that period, and within the book, he does show how, because of the rights being offered to women in all levels, basketball then started the evolution of moving further and further until the 76 Olympics.
And like you were talking earlier, Andrew's book is spot on. It tells the true story of women's basketball, how it evolved into what it is today.
Cheyenne, one of the things I like to do in my books is I love sports, so it's a sports story, like you said. But I also want it to be more than just a sports story. And my books are considered young adult books, that are read in middle schools and high schools. And I think for kids, maybe it's not intimidating to pick up a book with a basketball player on the cover, or a baseball player. And I want them to enjoy the sports part of it, but also to learn something too, And so in the case of this book, it was learning about feminism and women's rights and how that did, like you said, sort of on parallel tracks with the growth of women's basketball over the century, from the time basketball was invented until today.
So before Title IX was signed into law in 1972, could you guys explain your personal frustrations with unequal access or anything like that between men and women?
Well,
Well, my story is a little bit unique. I came around when integration was first starting in our community, 1964. And for the longest time, we were talking last night, for the longest time, I was the only black on my high school basketball team for 4 years, and 2 years when I went to junior college. So I was the first, but kind of instrumental in getting other black female players to come on board. So,
and for me, New Jersey, they did not offer women's sports in elementary school at all. And so I have an older brother, 2 years older, and he loves sports, so I learned how to spit like the guys and talk like the guys. And in New Jersey, you have that little strut. But always remember, I was 7 years old, and I used to have long hair with pigtails. And in order to go and play with the guys on, say, the baseball field, I'd put my pigtails underneath my cap, or the groundskeeper would kick me off. Same thing with basketball. I had to wear like one of those small kind of cap hats just to put my pigtails underneath, or because I was a female, I did not have an opportunity to be free to be able to play.
They came up, I think it's hard for high school kids now maybe to understand what it was like for women of your generation or generations immediately preceding it, where they were oftentimes told, you're a girl, you're not supposed to play sports, you're not supposed to sweat, you're just supposed to, look pretty for the boys. That's all you're supposed to do, and how unfair that was. And many schools didn't offer girls sports. Like you said, in the state of New Jersey, public schools didn't have it. Your teammate, Pat Summitt, her dad had to move their family across the county line so that she could go to a high school that had basketball. And you were growing up at a time where you didn't have a promise, well, if I work really hard, I can get a college scholarship. That wasn't common. It wasn't happening, or if I'm a really great player, I can play pro basketball, or I can play in the Olympics. You didn't even know there was going to be an Olympic opportunity until a couple years before the '76 Olympics. So I really admire the fact that these women worked so hard at what they loved, even though people were telling them they shouldn't even be an athlete, and there was no big reward waiting for them, at the end of the rainbow by working hard.
Yeah. So when you were writing your book, who were some people that you looked up to?
In terms of like who I wanted to talk to for the book, or mentors in writing?
Anyone that you researched or interviewed?
Yeah. I mean, for me, research is the most important part of the book. When you're writing nonfiction, I think every single sentence in that book comes from some research that you've done. I wasn't imagining what they might have felt like, or what they might have said, or what they were wearing, So I was trying to interview as many people as I could who were on the team, or who tried out for the team, who were coaches, women that just were playing basketball at that point in history, reading a lot of books, watching videos, getting as much information. So when you read the book, you feel like, well, I must have been there, even though I wasn't there. That's the way I want the reader to feel. As far as looking up to people, I looked up to all of them, just like legends of the game. They're both in the Basketball Hall of Fame, right? And so many players from that team, coaches from that team, administrators, they're like the building blocks of what's possible now. So when you watch the Olympics now, and the U.S. women's team is winning the gold medal at every single Olympics, like that wouldn't be the case if it wasn't for the pioneers that came first.
I think his book, like Carolyn and I were talking about this, it's so real, because sometimes you read a book and you're like, did that really happen? Because it's bizarre. But I know the stories.
Yes.
So I know it was really true. So you don't always get, when you read in this book, oh, everything was hunky-dory. It was not.
No.
And so there's some really outright statements that were made that you would say, wow, did that woman really say that at that time? Did she really feel that way? And it was really, it is amazing that he was able to take what actually happened, and it makes you feel like you're right there with him, understanding what we're going through.
So it sounds like it took you a lot of time and a lot of research to do this. Why did this topic inspire you?
Well, that's my fourth book, and all of them deal with sports and history and some social issues. So my first book, Strong Inside, is a biography of Perry Wallace, who was the first black basketball player in the SEC, played at Vanderbilt in the late 60s. My second book, Games of Deception, is on the first U.S. men's Olympic basketball team that played at the 1936 Olympics in Nazi Germany. Third book is called Singled Out. It's a biography of Glenn Burke, who is the first openly gay Major League Baseball player. But when I was traveling around to schools to talk about Games of Deception, the story of the first men's team, I was at a middle school in DeSoto, Kansas, which is right outside Kansas City, and there was a Q&A at the end, and a girl who was in 8th grade named Maddie raised her hand, and she said, well, you've told us the story of the first men's team. What's the story of the first women's Olympic basketball team? And I had been thinking I wanted to do a book about women's sports, but I didn't quite know what the subject would be exactly. But when she asked that question, it hit me like, well, of course, that would be great, and when I realized it was in the 70s, and you could tell the story like in the context of Title IX, like you mentioned, that there were so many legendary players that were on this team, that it could be more than just, they had great games and won a silver medal. Like you could put it into context of something significant.
So when Title IX was first signed into law, many athletic directors, college administrations didn't believe that it applied to athletics. While the process was slow, when did you begin to see how the new law would effectively change opportunities, facilities, equipment, anything like that?
Who knew that 37 words would be so powerful? I read that over and over when we became 50 years old this year. And I thought about the 37 words in my case, because black people were separated from, I'm going to say it, white folks. I'm just an old country girl. I mean, plain as day. We couldn't do a lot of things that white people were allowed to do. We couldn't go certain places. And that's very unique because here I am, 16 years old, and in a new environment where only a few people look like me. And when you're out there on the court, but my teammates, they didn't see that. They didn't see color. I had no problems with my teammates. We went to a place to eat after the ball game, and the team had went there before I became a team member, and we got off the bus, and we walked to the door, and some person came to the door and said, "She can't come in here." And my coach, Freddie Paul Wilson, I love him dearly, he's passed away now, but he said, if she can't come in here, we can't come in here. And he told us to get back on the bus. And so that was profound to me. So we turned and started to get back on the bus, and when we did, somebody else came, I think it was the manager, I don't know, came running up to the door and said, "Oh, yeah, guys can come in, yeah." But the unique part about it, we had to go to the very back. There were all kind of seats around. But because I was there and my cousin was there, we had to go to the very back.
I think we still struggle with Title IX issues at the present time. I think it took a while for us to really notice, and in fact, if you remember watching the women's NC2A last year, when we had a gal from Oregon identify what the men's championship had for weight training and the little stack of weights that the women had, that really opened the eyes.
Yes.
So because another woman spoke up, and media now really accelerates things. We have difficulty finding film and pictures of us when we played. Nobody ever kept anything. And for even the Olympic team, you try to find something from 1976, and poor Andrew was looking all over the world. Oh, we played here, we played there. He couldn't find any because years ago, you just went right over that. After so many years, you go, all right, who cares about this? Let's move on. But I think for me, it took a lot of lawsuits in order for the men to be able to look and say, hey, we have to. We almost forced, because of the lawsuits, for them to be equal. So in about 1982, the NC2A said, oh, hey, look, I think we can make money off the women. So let's go ahead, and I'm only joking, but anyway, everything's about money, we know that. But about 1982, they decided to take women underneath their wing, and at that time, we began to see where the colleges had an athletic director for women, athletic director for the men's program. Now the NC2A took over and said, no, but we only have one athletic director, and so you could imagine 99.9% were run by the man. And the woman, we were given a title, Senior Women Administrator, not just assistant, right, AD. It was Senior Women Administrator to say, okay, you're going to have a small part in this. So it has changed a little bit, and I think, again, as I say, social media, I think really has helped expose, and I think this NC2A, we're calling it March Madness, not the women's Final Four,
Right.
or the men's Final Four. It now is Big Call. And if you start watching your ads on TV. You're seeing Candace Parker. You're seeing a lot of women, Sue Bird, being on commercials with Steph Curry and all the other named athletes.
So earning that right to play at the international level was a really big step, but earning the respect and learning from other teams like the Russians was a challenge. So how did our women's game need to change to compete at the highest level?
Go ahead, Julie.
Well, let me tell you, in 1976, even in order to make that team, it was just an open tryout. That 1,500 people tryout got down to 32, and then they picked 12 people and then a few alternates. When we played, the Russians had a 7'2" girl. Our tallest player was 6'2", 6'3", and so there was that height disadvantage. However, I think because we played, and Carolyn and I played on the 75 gold medal Pan American team, I think we had enough international experience, but the height and the development of females, that was where we really had lacked. So I think after the 76 Olympics, what our United States, USA basketball learned is we've got to develop from a younger age. And so what has resulted now is 3, 4, 5-year-olds are now going to these little mini clinics during the summer. And girls are starting at a younger age. And plus, we're finding people, some like Carolyn, she was the only 6'1", is that right?
6'2".
6'2", sorry.
Don't
got
cut
it.
my hands.
Yeah, I'm like that too. I was saying 5'8", I'm really 5'5". But anyway, we're finding more people that are interested in playing the game that have the height and the skill, because you can't coach height. We always talk about that.
But one of the interesting things about all of this, the women that played on the Olympic team, the women that played on the Pan American team, the women that played before us, we've all learned to reach back and bring others up. And that's what we're here for today, is we want to let other young women and other little girls know that they're able to dream the dream. Because back in '64, who would have thought that a little old skinny black girl would be able to play on a Pan American team for the United States of America? So you can dream the dream. You can be the dream.
I mean, in Carolyn's hometown in East Tennessee, the segregation in the community, the black kids couldn't even play at the park.
Right.
You know, so it's pretty remarkable that she was able to develop to become an international level basketball player from those circumstances. And I thought it was really interesting that your coach, before the silver medal game in the Olympics, she sat the players down. Sometimes when you're working on a book, you wonder, do the people involved understand the history that they're making at the time? You know, and most of the time people say, oh no, like it was just a game. It wasn't until years later that we realized that was an important historic moment. But Coach Moore said, if you win this game, it'll change women's sports in this country for the next 25 years. You know, and she was thinking about the next generations like you're talking about. And you all were aware of that people were watching, you know, and the country was changing thanks to Title IX, and it's not finished. There's something for your generation to do also. Right. But things were changing, and there would be opportunities for little girls to play basketball in middle school and high school. And because you won that game and people were watching, you know, on TV, it did inspire kids to play, girls to play basketball. And you saw the rates of like high school basketball participation among girls really increase. Then college scholarships are coming along, and that built a pipeline to like improve the talent pool that was available for USA basketball. I mean, not that the players on the 76 team, they're all in the Hall of Fame. Like I mentioned, they're great players, but maybe there wasn't as much depth of talent at that point as there is now, where there's so many feeder programs to develop these players.
Yeah. As you guys have mentioned, there was definitely a lot of barriers for you to go to. So what was the feeling of wearing that USA jersey and representing our nation?
That was amazing. I just think it's you know, when you get excited about something, how the blood goes through your body. Like when you finally make a team and they give you that the very first time, you want to sleep in it, which I did. And you just, when you watched it and everything, that was like the pride. And it's almost, you get speechless, because a lot of people ask, how was that? You know, how was playing the Olympics? How was getting up on medal stand? And it's just, anytime you participate and be a part of a United States Olympic, any type of their programs, you are competing against another country. You are representing more than just you. Your whole team is representing, yes, the females, yes, basketball, but you're representing that flag. And to stand there and see your flag be raised, and especially when you win the gold and you get to hear your national anthem. And you're looking around, all these people in a different country were cheering against you. You know, we have something very unique, I think, in the United States as far as our athletes. We have this sense of not only pride, but we have like that extra energy that other people don't see. We do it for the love of the game. Other countries do it, and especially years ago when we played against the communist countries and so on, they played because they had to. You're going to play basketball, you're going to be in the field, you're going to do this and that. So they had to play and be perfect. We just played because we loved the game, and we just wanted to beat everybody. You know, being from New Jersey, you always wanted to be number one. So that's why I was a pretty good point guard, because we were going to just plow over everybody.
But we don't have the words. Well, I'll say I don't have the words. The feeling that we experience, as Juliene said before, standing on the podium in a foreign country and hearing your national anthem played and getting the gold medal put on your neck and everything, it's a feeling that you can't describe to anybody. It's like when you find your first love or you marry someone, when you met Mike. But it's exhilarating. You just want to tell everybody that you see, look what I got. See what I've got. And you're very proud. I know when we got back from Russia, a number of us, but I know I did, I kissed the ground at LaGuardia Airport. I did. And I think that every young person needs to leave the United States for 1 month, and we would appreciate more of what we've got here.
Yes.
It's really cool to hear y'all say that, and to think about how unfair it was that half the population was denied those feelings before you had the opportunity as women to represent the country in basketball, right? I mean, I think that really is just an interesting way to look at it, that feeling of accomplishment and pride in representing the country on that level in the world that was never available until women like these came along.
Yes.
Well, it's in every profession now. Every profession.
Yes.
Look at you sitting here.
Yes.
A young man sitting here. So we are pushing ahead, and as Andrew said before, we're passing the torch on to you.
So let's fast forward to present then. This past weekend I watched several men's and women's games. Today we have female studio analysis, game announcers, producers, site managers, and many more opportunities. Do you feel proud for the role that you played to help extend those roles to young women?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Title IX was the driving force. But if we had not pushed forward, where would we be right now? Think about that.
Yeah.
It's having faith without seeing what you're doing. And so we did it, as I say, because we loved it. We were competitive. We found something, a passion that we had. And that's why in all professions, you have to, when you're ready, you have to find that passion. That's what gets you going. And then you realize, hey, I'm doing this because I love it. And then you want other people to join in. And like she said, pull the others ahead.
And that was the last scene of the book is one of your teammates, Gail Marquis, who said that sometimes she resented the fact that later generations had things that her generation didn't have. And then she sort of matured in the way she thought about that, and she realized that every generation has its struggles, passes the baton on to the next generation. And so I think, speaking for your generation, it's really important to you that kids today look around, appreciate what came before, what people that came before you accomplished, but then also look and see, okay, what isn't yet equitable? And there's probably still some things that could be improved that you're going to work on improving so that girls and women who come after you benefit from. Just like you said, the faith. You might not see it. My boss at Vanderbilt University is their first black woman athletic director in the SEC, and she talks about sometimes flowers you plant the seeds and you don't see the flowers bloom, but you know that you planted them, right?
That's
And it's
right.
still important to do. And so that's the challenge for your generation.
Yeah. So I understand that all of you guys will be at Sinclair Community College for the presentation on Tuesday, March 21st at noon. Will you be sharing similar information with them, or is there a different message you guys are trying to send out?
I think we'll be sharing similar messages. Hopefully the questions are just as good from me as from you this morning. But yeah, we want to tell the history of, you know, what they accomplished, what it meant at a bigger picture beyond basketball, what the challenge is for younger people today.
Yeah, and if we could even influence each one of us, a few people, even one person, to say, hey, you know what? When I wake, right now, I'm going to think about it. And then when they wake up the next day, they have a little bit more goals, a little bit more passion. You know, I'm all big about, as people have asked me to speak, I'm real big about 4 words that I always want people to remember: dream, plan, work, and believe. Because you got to dream and you got to dream big. You can't have little dreams. You have 50 dreams, maybe 2 of those will come out. 1 of those will be passionate that you do. And then you got to plan. You know, like we all had to plan. Get up this morning, get ready for this, right? What are you going to wear? Everybody plans. But the difference between the people who make it for the people who almost make it is work. And you got to put that work into it. And the last thing is you got to believe in something, you know, more powerful than yourself, but you have to believe. I mean, Billy Moore on the Olympic team, she kept telling us, you have to believe, even though we were running 16 suicides one time, and we knew, like, oh my God, we're gonna die here. But she kept saying we had to be in, we had to believe when we got to the Olympics that we were the best in shape team. We weren't gonna be the tallest, we probably weren't gonna be the most skilled, but we were gonna run them to death.
Yeah.
And that's that belief that you have to have in yourself and others that you work with.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I like about our group is we knew we had to face hard times, but we didn't focus on the negativity. And negativity can kill you. You have to focus on the positive. The Lord wants you to know how you're going to respond to the negative, when the challenges that you may face, and you're going to face some challenges. How you respond to that is how your life is going to go. I was the last player to get cut on the 76th Olympic team. I wasn't even an alternate. And yeah, I was upset, I was angry, I was mad, and I cried. But my teammates came into my room before, and I was packing, and they sat with me and talked with me and cried with me. And that's what it's all about. Yeah. I love this girl right here. We've been friends for over 9 years. but it's all about how you accept your challenges. And life, you're going to, more than sports, you're going to face many challenges in your life. Who am I going to marry? How many kids am I going to have? And those types of things. But it's how you feel about those and how you react to all of that. Andrew called me and he asked me would I be interested. Boy, I jumped at the chance to be in his book. And it's just, if you got the book and you see your name and your story of what someone else has written about you, and how you react to that is phenomenal. So.
It's amazing. I really appreciate you guys coming out today and talking with us. It's amazing what you guys have done, and we really appreciate you being here. And thank all of you for joining us on Student Connections. We truly appreciate your time and sharing your insights on a game that we love. I hope you enjoy your time in the Blue Water area, and we look forward to a great week of women's basketball.